My guest today is multi-award winning writer-director Georgie Cowan-Turner. Now, she was selected as a BAFTA Connect member in recognition of her contribution to the film industry and her promising career ahead. Now, she has been commissioned by the BBC, Northern Ireland Screen and BFI, with her films screening in competition at BAFTA and BIFA qualifying film festivals. Now, her films were described as the breath of a fresh, bold new voice by the South London Film Festival, and her writing as original, imaginative, distinct by Sister Pictures. Now, she has been commissioned by major artists to direct music promos and was recently asked to join Academy Award winning Slick Films talent roster. Now, in her brand new short film that we're talking about today, The Generators is a love story set within a recognizable dystopia. It imagines an alternate present where human energy is more accessible and exploitable than fossil fuels, and the welfare state no longer exists. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome award-winning writer, director Georgie Cowan-Turner and her brand new short film, The Generators, to the show. Welcome, Georgie.
Hello, thank you so much for that really lovely introduction.
Well, you're very welcome. And I have to say, your film, The Generators, is probably the most creative short film I think I've ever seen. How did you get such a vision to create this innovative film?
Well, thank you, thank you for saying that. I think, to be honest, it was with everything I do. I kind of start somewhere quite simple, and then I just get more and more inspired along the way, and then I get to the edit, and then it's really whatever materials I have in front of me, and I just happen to have like the most fantastic cinematographer, the most fantastic costume designer, the most fantastic cast. And so there was just so much that I could do, that it just became like, it was just so creative, basically. I think when you've got everything there, you can push it as far as you want to push it. Because it wasn't, I mean, those two actors didn't have a bad shot. It was really, really useful.
Well, explain where the idea of human generators came from.
Well, so this was really, it was a mixture of things. Firstly, it's kind of happening. So it happens on a more recreational basis at the moment. I remember at school, someone like once brought in a bike, and then they sort of made a joke out of it, kind of thing. It was like, a science experiment, and it just felt really punitive and really stupid and really like the worst possible solution to the climate crisis. And so that was the kind of starting point. And then I thought about the strain of energy poverty and the way we always think about climate change as something very scientific and very statistical and very in the future. And I wanted to make it very psychological and very physical, and um, really to just draw on like the fact that it's happened before, it can happen again, and it's just painful. I think that was the main inspiration for that.
Well, I was reading in your press kit, which is extremely detailed and probably one of the best I've ever seen. The backstory of Oscar Wilde is very interesting. Who was punished for whom he loved is contrasted with your story of one who becomes a human generator to save the one he loves. And your character, Oscar, would be the one to lose his love or die trying.
Yeah, that was, I found it was one of those things that was in my brain. I knew about Oscar Wilde, but I had kind of forgotten it. And then when I was just looking into like how could we build this structure and how could we make it feel quite industrial, I then re-remembered, and I thought, okay, that's probably where the whole story came from. It was just lodged. Yeah, I mean, so Oscar Wilde, a lot of people know who he is, but very few people know about the fact that he was imprisoned for being gay. And as part of the kind of Victorian punishment, they would put people on this human treadwheel where they would sort of, they kind of pull themselves up. I think it was something like I might be getting this wrong, but the amount of steps they did was the same as climbing Everest or something. So it was a huge amount of physical exertion, and it was supposed to just like destroy them. And the whole idea of that I found so tragic, because he's such a fantastic artist, and the idea of something so like cruel happening to someone who's so influential to so many people, and so many people don't know about this because of the kind of humiliation and the way it's sort of been buried in history. And then, yeah, I thought we could kind of twist it and make our story about the fact that the love is accepted now, but the society has become so cruel around them, it's sort of forgotten the whole point of being a human anyway. So it was just, yeah, it was really tying into that. And also I kind of weirdly, Oscar Wilde just kept becoming a connection through everything in this film. So I sort of just, I kept kind of trying to nod
Now,
to it.
is that why one of the characters is named Oscar?
Yes, definitely.
Very, very good play there. And, the Generators is during a time of extreme energy poverty and a strict credit system. And the setting in your film is so authentic. You left no stone unturned in creating this film. And as I went through this film and I was watching it, I kept thinking, there's another film that kept popping into my head. I'm thinking, okay, is there another film that compares to this? And so I went back and I had to go way back, and I looked at another film, Soylent Green, with Charlton Heston from 1973. That story included population overcrowding, pollution, and complete resource depletion, where all natural food supplies became extinct. Did you look at any other films for inspiration when you created The Generators?
That's really interesting, because I haven't watched that film, but now I need to. Um, yeah, a lot of films. The main film that I watched that kind of got me into the whole space of the sort of tone of it was Bicycle Thieves. That kind of, I think the like the trajectory of bad things happening to a character, and the way that like I just have to see a still from that film, and it kind of makes me kind of really sad and really worried. The other one, again, again, a lot of it, to be honest, was stills and like photographs, and that's kind of why it has quite a photographic quality, the way we sort of went about each shot. But the other one was Wings of Desire. There's this amazing shot of one of the angels and kind of a mortal walking through like um, a very sort of post-industrial Berlin that just reminded me so much of the Midlands, which then made me think of dystopias and energy depletion, and those were the kind of the first ones. But then it became, yeah, a lot of the stuff. I mean, the edit was very influenced by Raging Bull, and I find whenever I'm editing, I end up just watching a lot of Scorsese, because I just love the pain of the edit. It kind of it's very psychological. And Persona, that was the other one. This sort of constant sense of unease, and yeah, and actually, Le Jeté, the one I actually go on about the most. Almost forgot that one. That one, in terms of the location, we really lucked out with this old power station in the middle of Wapping, so a very kind of creepy area in London. And when me and the DP Eberholt walked down this corridor, we just thought, oh, we are literally in Le Jeté. We need to like reference this as much as we can. It had that underground sci-fi creepy quality. So yeah, those were the main influences. But then there was a lot of just random
Well,
random stuff that kind of.
I mean, this film, oh, ladies and gentlemen, you talk about a short film that you have to see. I mean, because Georgia, I mean, there was, like I said earlier, there was no stone unturned in the creation of this film, from the setting to the look to the editing. I mean, everything played, even down to the costume design. I mean, even when I went back to watch the film a second time, that's what I started noticing. Oh, the electrical wires were strung over doorways, but they were only connected to absolute necessities. And to me, this was a sign showing the connection to Alex being connected to a dialysis machine that was then connected to an archaic human generator, which was technically a treadmill.
Yeah. It was very I'm very interested in objects and like the way I think it's something as well that's often ignored when we think about kind of climate change is we always think about progression and we always think that we're always going to have a better phone and a better computer and all of this stuff. But when people start to struggle and they don't have power, they lose these things. You can't afford to power your new iPhone, you can't afford to power your laptop or your TV. And so it was about everything. I wanted every bit of energy used in this film to be shown, and to show that kind of the sort of the shift from it being something that's a bit inconvenient at the start of the film to something that's it's like there's no way he can survive that. There's no way he can power. And I mean, with dialysis, that came from the idea of it's literally pumping the blood around your body. It's like it's another circuit. So I just thought, yeah,
Yeah,
it kind of all it all fit
yeah,
in.
yeah, exactly. Because if I think people, there are people who have what dialysis once a week, and there are those that may have it more than once a week.
Yeah, normally more than once a week is better. It's kind of it's just like being recharged really, and if you're it's whatever stage you're at. We kind of wanted it to feel like our character, um, once he lost the energy, um, he needed to be recharged, and so it's that sort of like point of no return. Like they can't go home because he needs that treatment. Like it's if he doesn't get it, who knows what's going to happen to him.
Yeah, you played.
So
Yeah, excuse me. You played the energy idea from not only from society, energy powering certain appliances, so to speak, in the home or in anywhere else. Then, like you had said, Alex, he needed that blood being pumped and filtered with the dialysis machine. So it was even his own energy. Then you had Oscar. Then it was his energy that he had to use to keep Alex alive, but only his energy was only going to last so long. And that scene where I was shocked that he actually that with the way the whole treadmill setup was that he had to run to generate excuse me, he had to run to generate the energy and not just like walk. I mean, to me it's like, okay, walking would be easier, but walking doesn't produce enough energy that you would need from that type of apparatus. And so then I went back to think, how in the world did Oscar Wilde do it? Because I know that his situation in prison, that was more like what? One of those stair stepping contraptions where it's almost like you're walking upstairs forever. So you're not running. But to see Oscar put everything he had to generate as much energy into Alex, he was losing his. And the way you
yeah,
shot it, the way you filmed it, oh my gosh, you don't. I mean, as an audience, it's almost like you don't really know what to do. You're like, I want to cheer him on, but his energies are going to last so long because it's not like he's running a race, but he's really running a race against time and life, so to speak. And it was really heartbreaking to see, especially that scene in the way you filmed it, because oh my gosh, I think every part of this film was just brilliance. But I have to ask you something because there was something that got me stuck. When Oscar and Alex arrived at the hospital, the nurse said that their energy credit was zero.
Mm.
Was that because they didn't generate electricity on their own? Um, so is that why Oscar had to get on the treadmill to generate the energy for Alex's dialysis machine?
Yeah, that was basically us just trying to throw out. That was kind of the like bicycle thieves thing going on there. It was that like, when you live in a society that doesn't really make sense, they can just make up the rules whenever they choose to. So it was kind of, they just assumed. I mean, the longer backstory that we didn't film because it just didn't really work, was kind of that everything went wrong that day, and like they were supposed to get transport to the hospital, and then that didn't come, and then Oscar's work capped his credits. But when you're doing a short, sometimes you think, do you know what, we just need to just need to make this simple. And oddly, I don't know, like my experience sometimes with these kind of institutions and hospitals is they don't always need to explain the rule. They just make a new rule, and you just have to decide in that moment, like, okay, that's what we've got to do. So we didn't want to make the world too complex that people would have to worry about how that happened. Only the consequence. It was all consequential, I think. If it didn't happen then, it was going to happen in a couple of
Yeah, but
weeks.
it was a very serious moment because it's like today. You go to the hospital and the first question they ask you, they may ask you what is wrong with you, but usually the second question is, do you have insurance? And it was almost the same when they were standing there like your energy credit is zero. And I'm like, and then I saw the look on Alex's face. This absolute worry coming over him. So, all these other people were saying, okay, go left, go right, go to this room. And then he's just slowly being pushed back. And then he had to go in the waiting room. And it's basically just waiting and waiting until they finally get to those people that were listed as energy credit zero. And that was heartbreaking to watch because a lot of people today feel like that.
Yeah, especially I think like I think in America that's my biggest fear, is like not having healthcare, which we do. Like we have free healthcare here, and we've had there's definitely strain on the NHS in our country. And I don't know how I don't know how I would survive in America. Like I find it really really scary. And I think here what we have at the moment is, it's not refusal, but it's like there's those times when people bring it up, and they bring up the idea of, oh, do we need an NHS? Do we need this? I think the generators was very much my reaction against, like, absolutely do not touch it, because it's one of those things. It's such a like it's so scary. But I think the scariest thing I'm finding is, the more I listen to kind of scientists and economists talk about what might happen in kind of the future if we don't sort of change our energy consumption, is it's always things like healthcare that goes first, because we can't. It's those people that are seen as a drain on society that they, if you start thinking of it like what's going to take up the most energy, people start to think in these really cruel ways. Um, and that was kind of quite central to it, because I thought that's what happens. You see it happen all the time. A lot of what was happening at the time of writing it was, there was a few articles that were coming out in the press about, one of them actually was, I think, Kate Winslet supported a mother who couldn't afford to pay her energy bill, and so she couldn't afford to power her daughter's life support machine. This was happening in the UK. So she donated money to make sure that the mother could pay the energy bill. And I just thought, God, that is just so that is so depressing. And charity and those kind of acts can't really sustain everyone. So yeah, it was an interesting period to write this short, I think, and tragic that it was happening whilst writing it. and is happening across the world. It's just
Yeah, I
hasn't
mean,
happened to,
yeah, even here, we recently were our area. We were recently hit by a hurricane,
Mm,
and so power was out probably for about 2.5 or maybe 3 days. But the first ones that got power were all the hospitals.
mm,
So in a way, it kind of goes back to your film. So the hospitals are going to end up being the ones that are going to receive the biggest amounts of energy. And I mean, this film is everything you did in this film plays right into the emotion of the audience. But back on that scene on the zero credit when they arrived at the hospital, here's Alex basically have to go into the waiting room and just sit there and wait. But I love the fact on how you filmed where Oscar, he literally just takes off. And his idea is, I'm going to find an answer. I'm going to find a way. Regardless if the energy credit is zero, I'm going to find a way. And I think the most iconic shot in your film is when he is walking through that corridor and you see the light coming through each of the archways and you can hear the sound in the background. I was just like, oh my gosh. I mean, you could literally just frame that and make it a poster. Yeah, that was a great shot. But I want to ask you something too about the whole costume designs
mhm.
because you made sure that they reflected what would be available during a time of scarce resources, even down to the generative helmet and the belt made from scraps of material. How did you think of all of that?
Well, firstly, I was working with an amazing costume designer, Juliet Dodson, and she is. I think it's really rare on shorts to find someone who is like she designs um, as a costume designer, but also she does kind of more structural, like kind of more artistic pieces. So she was able to create everything firstly, but she also works at Angel's Costume Hire, which is huge and it's really well known across Europe. And they pretty much let us use whatever we needed because Juliet's so fantastic. So that gave us more scope to she's such a perfectionist, so she was on the same page as me of like when it comes to what we put Oscar and Alex in, it was like, what would you wear if you didn't have much? You'd wear probably jumpers and things that maybe you'd had for a while. You would have maybe mended them because you wouldn't go and buy new stuff because in an era of like no energy, you're not going to be making new like Primark and stuff isn't going to be functioning because it just won't be cost effective. So it was very much thinking in that way and also a little bit of character. We just felt that they suited jumpers a lot. And like Matthew, when you put him in a jumper, he just all of a sudden kind of transformed from his House of the Dragon character into this lovely, huggable guy that you just wanted to protect all the time. And then it was those kind of qualities. It was giving them this sort of like slightly iconic outfits, like the coats and those types of things that you'd associate with those older films. And then with the hospital, that was kind of so the nurse's uniform. That was completely designed by Juliet, and actually had fantastic like trousers as well, which we just couldn't get in shot, which is a shame. But that was kind of a nod to that sort of severity of those kind of 1950s films. But everything she was wearing was quite synthetic, so it was supposed to be a little bit more like they had a little bit more cash to splash versus the other hospital nurse who is way more under pressure and strained and is in something that's more badly fitting and kind of not as flashy. And yeah, and I think with the helmet and that part of it was also creative license. We wanted something that was kind of scary, but we sort of thought that in this world where everything costs and everything is an energy cost, why would they spend any money making something that worked for these people? It's kind of a punishment. That came a lot from the Oscar Wilde link, that idea of like putting people on a treadmill to grind corn. It doesn't make any sense. It's the most, like, if they really wanted those people to generate energy properly, they wouldn't have put them on a treadmill. They would have, just got them to work in a mill or something. That would have been more useful. But they chose something cruel because they wanted to punish. So we kind of played into that a little bit. And that punishment was just, you don't deserve something that works. That kind of
And
that
and
went through the whole thing.
that's what I picked up, because I'm thinking, okay, all the people that were going through the line with the nurse, that had energy credits built up, they were probably going into rooms where they just flipped on a dialysis machine or whatever they needed. It worked, no worries. They get their treatment, they go home. But then those that maybe they don't have insurance, or they got an energy credit at zero, they are punished. And in this case, it's almost like they were punished because you are not doing your part to help society as a whole.
Mm.
So this is your punishment. You get to go you get to go run on that treadmill and basically treat your own kind, treat your own family. And yeah, you're right. It was absolutely cruel. And it was really cruel to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that was, and that I think played into the power of things like costume design. Because for me, Oscar having to take off his lovely jumper, and then you see that he's got, I just found it really exposing, the idea of him having to change into this horrible outfit, because we've seen him at home, comfortable, how he should be. It kind of, yeah, those were the scenes for me that I found just the saddest to write and to film, and to
you,
watch back.
you created that power meter, that power light that he's looking at, and that just causes the audience to go, run faster, run longer, pace yourself, and even,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a scene where he's on the treadmill and he literally just grips that handle so tightly, and he knows that he has to keep going. And you even made it worse because you made him run in boots.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you picked up on that. Yeah, that was a thing that we were really keen on, me and Juliet. Just when you're thinking about what do I not want to run in, boots it was top of our list of like slippy. They're not exercise shoes. They're not made for that purpose.
They're not comfortable.
And no, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
so that I mean, like I said, you paid attention to the minute details of this film. Now, how did you come to cast Matthew Needham from Napoleon and Rory Fleck Byrne, who was in the award-winning short Dash? How did the casting come about?
Well, that was really exciting, actually. So I just got into contact with Dixie Chasey, who cast Poor Things and has done a lot of Yorgos Lanthimos films, and I'm just a massive fan of his work. So she came on board with her fantastic casting associate, Lucy Jordan, and they both cast it together. And basically, yeah, they just gave me this list after reading the script, and I gave them quite a few kind of like just character pointers. And as soon as I saw Matthew Needham, I just knew he was like exactly who I imagined. I wanted someone who could be kind of completely tender, but also had like a slight, not harshness to him, but like a quality to him, that is often played up in other stuff he's in, but I wanted to just completely contrast that in this. I love how tall he is. I just thought that was really great, for the silhouette. And he's just got a lovely voice, like the softest voice ever. So it was just really calm having him speak. And then Rory, I'd thought of him quite early on, because I'd seen him in a few things. He's Irish, so I liked that with the Oscar Wilde kind of nods. But also, just yeah, he's also a filmmaker as well, and just very. Both of them are just very sensitive, and Rory brings a lot of kind of just creative passion to it as well. So for me, having both of them on board, not minding that I was kind of going about things in a slightly different way, and actually being really excited by it was just really refreshing. Also, they just work so well together.
Yeah,
just
it was perfectly cast. I even like the look on the nurse's face because she was just stern. It was either or, you know. I mean, she wasn't going to show mercy or grace to anybody. It was a job, and that's just the way it was. But again, it was perfectly cast. But I also noticed too, you kept the dialogue to a minimum in this film. Why did you do that?
I think for me, there's a lot to take in. There's a lot of kind of world building around them. Um, Partly it was that these are people who are really tired, and I just thought I don't see them having big long speeches, but it was quite a it's quite a physical and like textural film, and there's a lot of moments where we had maybe some dialogue, and then on set it just didn't feel right. They were kind of what I like to do is if the actors can say it without me needing to say it, which they were, then I don't need to say it. And I think that the two of them they could communicate what I had written, in a close up or in just the way they sort of would walk towards each other. And with the sort of the remainder of it, it kind of felt the silence sort of starts to shift when, you know, in the later sections of the film, the noises are actually coming from the environment. That's the dialogue almost, is just like the machines, and how they are kind of screaming. So I think it gets noisy, you know, and it didn't feel like we needed that noise at the start.
Yeah, I completely agree because there was just the small bit of dialogue in the beginning when he's cranking up that little machine at at the house, um, and there was just a few words spoken at the hospital scene. But you're right; it was the sounds that you put within this film, focusing on the generation of energy. And And I love films that are very low on dialogue because it's the actors that are bringing forth the story, but they don't necessarily have to say anything. You can read it on their face. I mean, Alex was the perfect example because you saw the worry on his face. I mean, the look when he was standing in line, then when he was sitting there in the waiting room, it was the look that said everything. And then when he was finally admitted to one of the rooms to be hooked up to dialysis, even when the nurse came in, she had the look where, you know, she wanted to show compassion. And but boy, and then with Oscar, I mean, it was just him finding a way. And I love that short journey when he left to go find a way, and the pathway that you made him walk through, that just really just made the whole film. But it really brought that stark darkness, that fear, the worry, all at the same time. And that's the reason why when I look at your film, it's just this work of art. Now, I know you filmed this on 16 millimeter Kodak film and you shot it in black and white. Why were both of those elements so important to tell the story?
Well, so again, this was pretty much as soon as I had the idea. It was always in black and white in my head. That kind of came from I think it came from that tricking the audience to begin with, so that when they're watching it, you think, is this the past? And then it's revealed that it's not. And I really wanted that like instant, like, this isn't the past, this is the future, just to confuse people a little bit, was the main reason. The other one was kind of partly inspired, again, by the time I was writing it in, there was quite a few wildfires around where I was living. Areas which, that's just not normal. And some of the fields just became completely black. And I just like that idea of sort of a world with no colour in it. And that kind of solidified. But also, there's something about the fact that it's about energy and the lights, needing to keep the lights on, and having actors who've got these faces that just work really well in black and white, that it kind of just distilled. It just made it way more emotionally intense. And that was sort of, I didn't really want to worry about, what color is the wallpaper. I wanted to just like get in on their eyes. I wanted you to just see their faces. So that was the other reason. And 16 mil, that was one that we had to convince a lot of people for, as you do with shorts. But yeah, I mean, we had so much support from Kodak and CineLab, who did they graded the film for us, and they also did all the processing. So fantastic, both of them. It was that idea of it being really analog, and feeling it. Yeah, like me and Ebba were right from the start. We just thought it would feel so wrong for this to be digital, given it's all about energy poverty and strain and technology that's old and not working. We need it to feel gritty and grainy, and we need that. You need the process of recording it to be part of the film. So that was the main reason.
Like I said, you went so detailed on this. I mean, you literally thought of everything, because the black and white, even if we're in a society that is energy deficient, it'll feel gray. People will be worried, and when people are worried and living in fear, they're not being joyful and happy, and the whole world is full of color, because they won't see it that way. Fear brings forth darkness. And this film, well, on a play of words, generated that. And so, I mean, because when I looked at it, and because there are those dark scenes with Oscar where you're just filming really close to his face with the profile, and you see the beautiful graining of the 16 millimeter. I mean, you could have almost called it like a music video, but it's just a beautiful shot. How many feet of film did you use?
How many did we use in the end? I think I lost track. What happened was we didn't use much. We were really, really tight. And that kind of became part of, we sort of, in terms of the scheduling, we started very much like, we've got to just get these shots, got to do it in one take. And that was all the scenes in the house. They were very like, we've only got so much film. I was not allowed to have any more. So I kind of had to go through what could we afford. And then we were very, very conservative with it on those first couple of days. And then the final day when we were doing the scenes with Oscar running, we just had quite a lot of roles to use up. So we unfortunately for Matthew had like 10-minute takes of him just running. And then the film would just kind of, we had lots of moments where the role would kind of burn out at the end. And that was just great for the edit. So it became very method, I think. But yeah, it was a really interesting, I mean, it was the first time I'd shot on film, which was it was a very exciting process. I think it really kind of distilled every shot we did. Everyone was on it. The actors were, there weren't really dud takes. It was like,
Yeah, I think using actual film makes you a better filmmaker, because there are other things you truly have to pay attention to. Now, for those who are watching who have never shot anything on real film, because everybody's living in, we live in a digital age now.
Mm.
How do you calculate how many frames you're using based on time, especially with a 16 millimeter? How do you figure that out?
So, I mean, my biggest recommendation for it would be to not, I mean, because there's always a kind of risk that comes with shooting on film, only in that we're not as used to using it. Not that I didn't find it risky using it when I had a team who knew how to use it. And Ever, our DP, she was so proficient with how to shoot on film. So what we would do is we went through the script quite a few times, and we'd see how many we kind of calculate. She did like she's like with Juliet, our costume designer. She's extremely precise, and so she did a kind of calculation of how much we'd use. Based on the kind of the length of the film, so we sort of estimated we'd need. I think we used about 7 rolls in the end. I think we had about 10 that we could have used, but we didn't use. There was 3 left over. That's all I know. But it was a lot of kind of calculations of like how long did we imagine each shot would be in terms of time. And that dictated a lot of the shots. Like it kind of meant if we knew those journey shots, we knew those would be longer shots. The shots in the house, we would have to sort of say, okay, this shot to the actors, like, you need to just do this one quite quickly. There was one shot where they're having the conversation in the hallway before they leave, where I kind of, I went into digital directing brain and let it roll and just let them they were sort of ad-libbing that, but it just looked so lovely that I had to keep that one. I think that would be the only thing with shooting on film, that you have to be much stricter on yourself for how long you can kind of roll.
I see. I love that. I love that. And do you think doing this film on 16 millimeter made you a better filmmaker?
Um, yeah, I would. Yeah, definitely. I think what's interesting about it is that the music videos and things like that I do, there's always a bit of a fear of shooting on 16 mil. So you get very used to having a lot of footage that you then don't want to use. And I think I've always been quite happy to get a shot in one take if I'm happy with it. And I think that, like, from my experience, I think what I have done in the past is my very first film was a kind of makeup routine film, and we didn't have any budget, and it was a progressive routine. So we didn't want to have to take off the makeup, so we did that in one take, and then we had to get that, and it had to kind of go through on that journey, which was a journey that was very similar to shooting this film on film. Like, I wasn't going to get Matthew to sort of run again. Like, there were some moments where I just wasn't going to ask him to do that for me again. And so kind of having the added pressure of it being on film meant that no one else was messing up their role. Like, no one thought we could have another take because we would just tell them we don't have any film left. So it kind of, it kept everyone really, really hyper focused, which I loved. I think it was just a very good way of shooting. And then you have that lovely feeling of when it's developed, you have those couple of days where you don't watch any of it, and then it comes back to you, and it's sort of like, it feels, I don't know, maybe it feels a bit more magical, like it feels more precious. And then in the edit, it felt more precious, rather than just having 20 minutes of a bird flying in the sky or something that you can sometimes do on digital, because you get a bit carried away.
Digital digital is almost like a crutch, because like, oh, we can just do this again, because you're just shooting on cards,
Yeah.
for heaven's sake. And if you want to do 10 takes, you can do 10 takes and delete the other 9. So, but you can't do that with film. But with shooting on film, did you have to use a colorist when it came back? So when you were going into editing, did you have to do any type of coloring, even though it was black and white?
So we actually, yes, so we did this one quite unusually, in that we actually shot it in color, on color film, and then we graded it into black and white. And that was primarily because we were shooting in winter, and our DP was a bit conscious of just kind of risking some of the color tones if we went purely in black and white. We didn't have much control of the light, and it's a very dark film. So it was kind of, it was, yeah, that was a decision made just to ensure that we had that control. But it then meant grading in black and white when you've watched all of these black and white films that I've been watching makes you very, very obsessive. And you kind of, you notice everything, you notice the smallest sort of, oh, that looks a bit grey when I want it to look pure white. So that's where CineLab came in, because they're so used to black and white film stock. So they were kind of matching it to, we kind of created our own kind of film stock look that was sort of a bit of a kind of 70s black and white, not too high contrast, but there was enough contrast in it. So yeah, a little bit different. I think had we actually shot on like Kodak's latest black and white stock, it would look more high contrast. That's what I've noticed with films that have actually been shot in black and white. But yeah, we might have, who knows, we might have lost Matthew in those final scenes.
I was, so yeah, that would make sense, because if you shoot it in color and then you go in and then you make it black and white, then you can work to adjust. Because I can imagine filming it actually in black and white, because back in the day when they were filming with black and white, and you know this, when you watch those films, there's just this gray cast overall, even on the skin of the characters. You didn't have that in the generators. And I can't even explain. I mean, there are parts of this film that I can't even put in the words, because this film is so good. But the backstory makes this film even better. Because, like I said, I can say it over and over again how much focused on detail you were in this film. You were probably more detailed with this film than probably most of the filmmakers I've ever talked to. So, but overall, what has been the response to your film for those who have seen it?
Well, it's so it's just starting the festival circuit. We're starting in Drama International Short Film Festival, and yeah, we're getting a very interesting response from Europe, actually, which is exactly what I wanted. I really wanted it to sit within a European kind of audience, because there's a lot of references I think that people are picking up on. Yeah, it's great. It's like it's. I mean, I think when did we start submitting it? Probably like late May. So we're now starting to get that kind of response back. But from people who've seen it at screenings, the general feeling is like haunted comes up a lot. People wanting to rewatch it. I mean, I always wanted the reaction to be like kind of silence, people not really knowing how to process it. And then my hope was that you could kind of get that Matthew's face and that Rory's face would sort of get stuck in your head. And I think like the other thing I did was I used kind of, I love it in films where they repeat songs. And so for us, the kind of Chopin was sort of my way of forcing people to hear and see them, to haunt them a little bit more. So yeah, it's been really interesting. We've had some like in terms of how it's been programmed, it's kind of like some climate change kind of related programming, and then other people who are seeing it as more of a kind of just pure dystopia, and then others are seeing it as just a love story. So I'm curious to see where it travels to and who likes it.
I looked at it more like a love story with a bit of the dystopia. I didn't look at it at all about climate change. But what I do agree with the audience that have seen this film, it is haunting, but it leaves you where you're not sure how to describe what you saw. Because even when I watched the film twice, I was sitting there for the longest time. And it took me forever to write this interview up because I'm like, this film is so different than, I mean, I've probably seen 70 short films this year. And this one's so different than all of them. I mean, there's a few that stand out to me to this day that I will always remember. This one is one of those, but this is the only film that left me with, I loved it. First of all, I loved the film. I loved everything about it. But to sit there and explain it to somebody else, it's more like all you can say is you just need to watch it. And then come to your own conclusion, because
Yeah.
it's a beautiful film, it's an emotional film, it is a fearful film, it is art, it's it's art, it is moving art is what this film is. Because, and I'm glad that you took the risk of going to 16 millimeter and then going into black and white, because the colorization of the black and white is probably one of the best and most different that I've seen. Because when you contrast that, when you see Alex sitting in the waiting room, or when they were at home, versus the black and white shots of Oscar on the treadmill, or walking through the corridor, and you can hear the generators running in the background, and you see the look on his face. It's almost like you had these different tones of black and white, but they were the film moves from frame to frame so smoothly that only someone that's going to sit there and literally dissect it will even really notice, because everybody who watches this film is going to get caught up in the story, and that's the whole point in the film. And stellar job, Georgie.
Thank you.
I mean, any idea of maybe turning this into a feature film?
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of partly what's going on there. Yeah, definitely. It's a weird one where, a bit like I was saying, people said it's haunted them. It kind of has haunted me a little bit, and I kind of, I think, yeah, I think in terms of features that I've enjoyed recently, a lot of them have been those ones where, if you were to actually say what happened in it, like I loved La Chimera so much. But if you actually describe the plot, people will think, "Oh, okay, that's not that interesting." I love the idea of taking a genre like sort of dystopia and then making it something that's actually all about the humans and all about the feeling and is beautiful to watch. And I think, yeah, I love features where you don't feel the script. You just feel you're living with the image and the people in the image. A bit like artistic documentary with a
Yeah.
bit more flair.
I think what I want people to do is, and you know this, even log lines can be deceiving, but this is not what caught my eye. It wasn't the story. It wasn't the write up of the story. I was on Instagram and I kept seeing all of these still shots from the generators, and I'm like, I want to know more about this film based on its look. It
Mm,
The look, the black and white stills just drew me in. I'm like, man, this is it. But I didn't think dark. That was the thing. I didn't think
mhm,
dark. I'm thinking, okay, it's gritty, it's rugged, um, it's it was just for me before seeing the film. I would say very focused, because your stills would only show either Oscar or Alex, and so I kind of knew there was only really two main characters, and I'm like, man, I want to see this because it was just so artistic. And like I said, this film, Georgie, and now I know I'm not the only one. It's extremely difficult to put into words, but what goes through our minds is nothing but greatness.
That's yeah. That I mean, that's lovely to hear. I think that's what I want to get with films where I love the way things look, but I hate a shallow image. I really, you know, I don't know. I think that's. I have no idea how that is the style I've kind of moved towards, but I think it's sometimes you watch its older films maybe, and then there's times when I watch an older film and I might not feel anything, but I love the kind of the way the image is maybe making me feel, and it just feels like the filmmaker forgot to turn the emotion on, and so I kind of like to do that image, but then turn the emotion to like 100.
You
Um,
did, you
and
did, and I would almost bet that Martin Scorsese would love this film.
I mean, I would love to get it to him. I'm such a fan, and I think I again, it's a weird one. Everyone always like doesn't get why, because I don't think I scream Scorsese, but then when you watch his edits, you see the rough edges,
Oh yeah,
which I just love. I love seeing a sort of um, it's not unpolished. I think that's the problem. That's what annoys me is that like editing should make. I love feeling like it's a person's edited it rather than it's a kind of smooth progression forward. Like it, I don't know, not everything needs to be rough, but sometimes when it is rough, like in Raging Bull, you're like, that felt 20 times more violent than if I'd actually seen something like something modern day that's made where it's extremely violent, like just watching him flip the screen or something and like the arm, breaking rules just feels so much more intense to me.
yeah, and you need to, because I think a lot of films today they are so polished that we
Mm.
lose the emotion. And at the same time, I mean, if you don't capture the audience's attention, they're going to be using a film as white noise and staring at their phone. And
That's it. It's the
films have gotten I don't want to say I don't want to say exactly boring, but
mm,
there's just something flat about a lot of today's films. That's why your film stands out. And I would, in my own personal opinion, you did everything right.
that's lovely to hear. I'm sure the producers will be happy with all the
Well,
all the edits that they had to watch.
well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a film you have to see. The Generators. It's a love story again. It's set within a recognizable dystopia. It imagines an alternate present where human energy is more accessible and exploitable than fossil fuels, and the welfare state no longer exists. But the fragility of our existence is shown through honing in on the human story. The power of an enduring love, of partnership, mutual dependency, and of a protagonist who fights on in the face of adversity. It is a version of the future told through images of the past. A world drained of color where nature no longer renews itself. Ultimately, distilled into the stark black and white cinematography is the film's central conflict, the battle to keep the lights on or someone alive. Now, every creative decision was made to lend gravitas to the protagonist's story, and I wanted the viewer to experience the strain of energy exploitation through an analog film stock, just like Georgie said, and she did it with great cinematic brilliance. I mean, with an expressive shooting style, and oh, the sound. The sound makes this film where there is no dialogue. It's the sound. It's the mixing of this film was literally perfect. And but it also brings forth the boundaries between the humans and the machines. And you will feel this when you watch it. The film flows with the characters' emotions and breaks apart as they do, leaving the viewers with a profound sense of power and of love and the danger of treating people like machines or just another number. And ladies and gentlemen, The Generators by Georgie Cowan-Turner is a must-see short film. So if you are going to be at a film festival where this film is showing and appearing, you need to be sitting in the audience when this film starts to roll. And Georgie, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing this incredible, almost leaving all of us speechless to describe it. And that's a good thing.
Thank you so much for inviting me on, and it's been lovely to talk about the film. Because whilst it's hard for all the viewers to describe it, I could talk about it for days. I think I've been speaking about it for too long now.
Well, I think you raised the bar when it comes to actually shooting on film, and you raise it even higher by going to black and white. And ladies and gentlemen, I grew up, all I had was a black and white television until I was probably 18 years old. I only thought rich people had color. But but now we get to go back to black and white and realize how artistic it truly is and adds to the story. And it does in this film, The Generators. And so for all of you, I want to thank you for watching. And I'll either see you at the movies or from the red carpet.